Hey everybody, it's RCK. I'm back here again. I just want to go ahead and first off say how much I appreciate all the views I've been getting. I have really been surprised on how well all of this has been going lately. Other than that, I'm still working on the game I want to bring you guys. It's only mid 30s, I believe, so or around turn 30-ish or so. So I want to keep waiting a little bit longer, maybe a couple more weeks, and I'll be able to show that to you guys. Earlier today, I did play a Company of Heroes 2 game, um, and I've got a group together, so now we might be able to play some 3v3s or 4v4s. That might be something I could even record and put on the channel as well. I haven't quite decided yet. I don't want to get too far away from the minions, but eventually I will try to branch out some. Further ado, let's go ahead and bring you the national overview for this week. So we're going to be looking at MA, if anyone's wondering, middle age, and this is going to be Satis, miasma. Now, this is a completely reptilian nation. First one we've seen so far on the channel. Um, I I think they're a really cool nation. I personally own lizards myself. Leopard geckos anyway. So to go ahead and start this off, I don't actually want to go over sites to begin with. We'll look over national features and stuff, and even some things that aren't showing up in the national features. In this overview over here, if you look, this is something a lot of players actually don't know. It says within provinces influenced by this dominion, income is increased by 1% per level of dominion, and the income of enemy provinces is reduced by 5% per dominion. So at the end of the day, it's actually worth going high dominion for this nation, even if you decide not to make sacreds, or you might want to make some sacreds just because, but if you don't want to make a large amount of them, and it still be worth it, because I mean at the end of the day, I mean 8% or 6%, I mean that's still gonna be a great addition to your economy at that point. So going over the rest of it here in the first little part, this is also something of most veteran players will know, but new players coming into the game may not know, of course. It says unless cold-blooded, soldiers inside the Dominion will suffer from disease. So what's going to happen? They're going to get disease. They're going to start taking afflictions, and they're going to die in a certain amount of turns just from being in the Dominion. So it's a pretty big deal. You have to be careful. You have to definitely, you don't want a prolonged war, let's put it like that, because the longer you're there, you might as well be sitting in a disease site. I mean, your army's definitely going to hurt from it. So let's go ahead and talk about the features here. First, heat scale 2. All your troops are going to be cold-blooded, so being or fighting in a cold province is definitely going to increase their fatigue by a lot, and it's really going to hurt your guys. They're going to fatigue out really quickly in cold provinces. So whenever you're at war, you're going to want to make sure that you're fighting in heat. If not, you're going to really pay for it. Um, Infantry, slave warriors, sacred serpents. You have large warriors. I believe they're size 3 or 4. Size 4. I just want to check that real fast. We'll definitely go over them here in a minute. So your magic paths are going to be death, nature, water, and astral. Astral being the lowest. I believe the highest astral you're able to get is astral 1. Um, uh, yes, this is going to be your only nature. Well, this is going to be your only magic paths. But at the end of the day, hopefully you're going to be able to find something, maybe a little bit of fire somewhere. Just try to break you into other things, because at the end of the day, it's really nice to always try to break into other things. Maybe I wouldn't say fire is going to be easiest for you to find, because when it comes to most indies, the easiest paths you're going to break into is, of course, nature, because you have so many deer tribe and the rest of that, or wolf tribe. I believe the shamans and stuff. And nature and water, I believe, are the easiest paths for you to break in as far as the indies go. Ones that you don't see as often. I mean, you won't see air as often. You will see astral from here from time to time, but you won't see high astral. You're going to see astral ones, and from time to time you'll see blood. Very rarely you might see death, but those are paths that you already have. So it's going to be really difficult for you to break out of paths. I mean, you can always put it on your pretender and summon some things and I wouldn't want to say it's too hard. I'm sure there's plenty of ways. I might just not be thinking of them at the time. I'm definitely not a veteran in this game. I know my stuff pretty well, but I don't know everything. So be kind to me in the comments. So, other than that, you're going to have very, very powerful priests. Now, this nation is actually going to have recruitable holy threes in any castle, which is really surprising because we haven't seen that yet. There's only a few nations that can even recruit holy threes, and they're going to be coming in really, really handy whenever you decide to claim thrones or anything. It's, maybe go for a rush or something. You can really surprise people by having so many holy threes, and of course, having holy threes is great because there's always good holy spells, and if there's any undead in the game, you already have a really good thing to combat that with, depending on the bless, of course. So let's go ahead and check out these sites here. So the first one, we have the Temple Marsh. So here's all your recruitable or cap recruitable units right here. And now this one site is going to give you 2 death, 2 nature, and 1 water. So pretty good, very high. And the other one, which is the Empoisoners Guild, now this is just going to give you 2 cap only recruitable units, I believe, and that's it. So no gems from that. Altogether, you will only be collecting 5 gems a turn from your capital site. Um, but overall, I do believe that's pretty good. They're definitely gems you're going to want to have later on. I mean, I'll talk about the mages later on. I don't want to break into that too early. So let's go ahead and talk about the units here that you have. So to start off, you have your average militia. You have swamp survival. All your units can swim, so you don't have to worry about river crossings. Obviously, they can't go into lakes, but they can swim across rivers. So what I like to do with a lot of nations is I like to go cold 3, but because your troops have a swimming ability, you don't have to go cold 3. And one of my main reasons is because I don't have to worry about rivers. I don't have the extra worry about them, but it's just a pretty neat ability that I believe most of your units have. Like I talked about before, cold-blooded, they get exhausted very quickly in fighting in cold provinces. I've already went over that. And all of your lizards are going to have a poison resistance. Now they may vary from unit to unit. I know some are 5, I know some are 8, and I believe some are even 15. So very, very poison resistant armies, and that's going to really hone in on what research goals you're going to be going to later on for your nation, and also the paths that you're in. So just looking at this guy, 7 gold, 2 resources, 5 recruitment points. Below average stats being 8. Nothing to write home about. Low strength. This is not a unit you're going to want to make, and if you ever do make them, it's because you have 5 recruitment points left, or you have 2 resources left, and you just want to fill up an extra spot. You just want to get an additional troop for something, just a little chaff guy. So not too much to say about him. Next, we're going to be looking at the heavy infantry here. Still 10 gold. Definite increase in resources because at this point he's going to have a shield, an iron cap, and a halberd. He has the same tags he has before, being swamp survival, swimming, cold blooded, and poison resistant. And his stats are, you can tell, have definitely improved, and that's because he has a shield now. So I believe that increases his defense skill. His protection's pretty high, 16 protection. That is actually pretty nice. And another thing about your units is that they're all going to have sort of higher protection being because they have natural protection 5, as for most humans they'll just have natural protection 20. So that is pretty nice for your troops. Going on to the next unit here, we're going to have the City Guard. Now, the only real difference between this is now this unit is not going to have a helmet anymore. So, Archer Fire is going to be a big deal for him. On top of that, his protection did drop 4 points. He lost 1 defense skill. And he has all the original tags of the first 2 units, but added on, he's going to have a castle defense bonus. So if you watched the previous video that I made on Hinnom, I talked about how units had siege strength. Well, they also have siege defense. So with this, yes, his siege defense is 1, but while he's in a castle, it's going to push it up to 2. So something to keep in mind if you want to just have chaff sitting in a castle and say you're under attack or something, but you have enough of these guys in there that you don't have to worry about them ever breaking the walls down. Um, Not particularly any unit I would make too often, but they can be nice to have at times, especially since these have a shield and an iron cap. These not so much, but they have their siege bonus part, but it is what it is. So next we're going to be looking at the light infantry here. They're going to be having the same amount of tags, only 5 resources, so definitely a decrease in resources, which you can tell since they only have a shield at this point. With only having protection 5 as well, it means that the only protection that they do have, since they have no armor, is going to be their natural protection. And as far as I've noticed, so most of your troops have a little higher above average magical resistance. Yep. I just want to go through and double check. I don't know why I didn't go over that originally. But on top of that, they'll have lower than average morale, so that's something you have to keep in mind. Later on, I'll talk about something that could counteract that a little bit, but it won't help as much. I wish they had a little bit higher morale. Now, this unit, so far, everything's had spears, but this is going to be a javelin unit, which are going to be pretty decent depending on what you're fighting. Next, we're going to be looking at one of your main themes, I guess, in a way, as these lizards, their society, I guess, we're kind of reading the part below this. They are a slaver race or slaver nation. They have a lot of slaves. You have recruitable slaves. You have different recruitable slaves. Looking at this first slave warrior here, 13 gold, 3 resources, 8 recruitment points. You're going to be able to make a lot of these guys. And yes, they do have 8 morale, but they have 5 upkeep a year. So you take that 5 and divide it by 12, and that's how much it costs per unit per turn. And I'm telling you, this is a unit that are extremely cheap. If anyone didn't know the slave tag here, it says they have lower morale, which we talked about, but they can be boosted by Taskmasters, which you have, and we will go over when we go over the commander section. But the slaves do not get any salary or expense for food, and their upkeep is halved. This is why they're so cheap. Looking at their strength, 10 strength, nothing to write home about. 11 attack skill, 9 defense skill, a little bit lower here, so not as good. Protection 3, that's just going to be from natural protection. But their trident is going to be 20 damage or 20 pierce damage attack, which is going to be very, very impressive when fighting anything. It's going to absolutely go through armor, even heavily armored troops. And on top of that, they have an additional attack being a bite. So you're going to be able to put 3 of these guys to a square, and they're going to be 6 attacks per square. And they're going to be very high damage attacks, which is going to be a really big deal. So, as what I think for this nation, these slave units are a really, really big deal for you. And I think there should be the core of most of your armies. Yeah, you're not going to want 80 or 100, but you're going to be wanting 200, 300. You're going to want a lot of these guys, and they're going to be very, very cheap. But on top of that, you have to keep in mind that they are going to definitely take a toll on your supplies. But being a nature nation, which we spoke about before, this is one of your major paths, I believe. It's going to be really, really easy for you to make supply items like endless bag of wine, the enormous broth cauldron, I think, something along those lines. And that's going to really make you able to move these very, very large armies around and not take attrition from them, either having them starve or get afflictions. So it's going to be really, really nice. So heading to the next unit here, you have a runner. Now, with a combat speed of 16, I don't think I went over this before, these guys only have 11. They are essentially cavalry to you at this point. I wouldn't recommend having armies of these units. If you notice, they are slaves as well. But they could be something interesting to do to put these guys farther in the back in a corner, maybe in squads of 10 or more. and having them on hold and attack rear. And they're going to definitely make it across the field. While at the same time, yes, they have a spear. They're not as nice as the predecessor unit we had just a minute ago, having such low damage, but they do have 2 attacks, and they're decent attacks. I mean, you're not going to be wanting to face infantry, but at the same time, if these guys run behind the infantry or whatever frontline troops that someone may have and attack the mages aren't going to have much to do. I mean, they're just going to tear them apart. So something to keep in mind about these units. So next I want to go over the Falchineers. Now, a lot of people will pick these units as their core infantry units, and I do believe these units are actually really, really good. I mean, as you can notice, they have 2 18 slash damage attacks. So, like the other ones, they have very high density amount of attacks in each square. They have the ambidextrous trait, which is this one right here, meaning that they don't take a penalty from their attack skill by having 2 weapons. So the only big deal about this is, yes, they're going to have higher protection, but they're also going to cost a lot more. They're going to have a lot more upkeep. They're going to cost a lot more resources and recruitment points. So when you do lose them, it's going to be harder for you to get them back as fast as you could the slaves. Yes, they have an iron cap, which is nice, and that's really all I have to say about them. I can understand if you want to make these units, definitely. And even if you're going for a major slave army, it still might even be worth making some of these guys. But at the end of the day, it is completely up to whoever's playing the nation at the time. I don't want to influence you too much, but I just want to talk about a nation here for a national overview. So let's go ahead and head to one of the best units you'll have. Now this, of course, is basically the Slave Warrior. This one's name is the Elite Warrior, but altogether, I mean, at this point, you have a chest plate. So it's going to increase your protection by 5 compared to the other warrior, and the amount of gold it costs by 2. Now, this is the recommended core unit. The only reason I make the slave warriors is I made them in expansion. So in the first couple of turns, I exclusively made the slave warriors to kind of, I wouldn't say decrease, um, put a don't so it wouldn't hurt my income as much, because you are going to be gold restrained in the beginning for the first 2 turns, because you'll be making almost 30 plus units a turn. Um, but once I got to maybe turn 6, 7, 8, I don't exactly remember, I switched over to the Elite Warriors, because at that point I wasn't gold restrained. I was making a lot of gold actually, and we'll go over that. So like it says in the description below, they have better training and they have better armor. And I believe by saying that, their attack skill goes up a little bit, so it's going to be even easier for them to hit the opponent. So it's going to be very, very nice. So next we're going to be going over the Swamp Guard. Now this is going to be a cap only unit, being a sacred. You have the same poison, cold resistant, swimming, and swamp survival tag. You have a 1 weapon attack, being a falchion, but you have a shield and an iron cap, and you have a chest plate as well. So that's going to bring you up to a total of protection 18. So far, that's going to be the highest protection unit that you have. Average, well, a little above average attack and defense skill, so it's looking pretty good. A 19 gold, 21 resource unit. I would only make these guys if you felt the need to. I'll talk about the Blessed later on when I go over Pretender. But even then, I don't feel like these are the sacreds that you want to make if you decide to make sacreds. You have a stronger one later down the line if that's what you want to go for. So we'll go ahead and head on to the next unit. I didn't have too much to talk about him. So here you have another cap only unit, which is actually not even sacred. You have a poison Slinger. So it'd be 25 gold, 6 resources, and 32 recruitment points, being the highest recruitment point unit so far. yes, it's going to have a dagger, really no big deal. But you're going to have a poison sling that's going to deal poison damage to units. So it's not going to hurt your units as much. Some of them it may hurt a little bit depending on how much poison resistance they have if it does hit them. But this is really going to be hurting the enemy's army a lot more since I highly doubt they're going to have poison resistance. And it also does an area of effect damage, which is a pretty big deal. Yes, low ammunition, but it affecting one tile per turn is going to be pretty nice. They do have a really short range, so you do have to get close with them. Um, this could be something, maybe you make a handful of these guys and put them behind your slaves and have them on fire closest, or yeah, more than likely you'll have them on fire closest, hitting that front line. So, yes, well, it's a tough call depending on how fast your slaves can actually kill the units because you don't want to poison them just to have the slaves just instantly just blender them up. But it's something for you to definitely think about. I feel like in just about any army it might come in handy. So next we'll go over the Sobek Warrior. This is another cap only unit. I want to check in the bottom there, that's why I went back and forth. It's going to be your only size 3 unit going up to 25 hit points. They're going to be expensive. They're going to be resource intensive. Yes, they have 2 attacks, but I don't really see the purpose of you having this unit as much. I mean, some people may argue, some people may enjoy this unit. It's completely up to them. But I don't see it. I wouldn't particularly make this unit. So I'll go ahead and go on to the next one. But something I do want to bring up, they do have protection 20, so that's one of the highest protection units you have so far. But this is going to lead me to the last one, here being the Sobek Sacred Guard, which have even higher protection at 21 and 37 hit points. Now these guys are going to really go through and hurt any thugs, maybe even super combatants, depending on what they're if they try what they focus on, like protection or something. I believe this they would still even go through that. I mean, you'd have to have maybe over 40, and if not more than that, depending. So they wouldn't deal damage to you. They do have 2 attacks. These guys, I mean, yeah, they're pretty good. I wouldn't make a lot of them. I would make 1 or 2 every now and then just to have them. And this is going to go back on the bless. I'll show you later. Um, they're very situational. You might need them, but I highly doubt it. I would still recommend going for the Elite Warrior strategy. Poison resistant 8, like I said, a little bit higher than the other units that you had because they vary from unit to unit, but they are sacred units. I wouldn't recommend taking a heavy bless for these guys. I wouldn't recommend taking a bless for these guys at all, to be honest. So I'll just go ahead and go on to the next unit, in which that's going to be the Star of our Commanders, and I'm going to take a sip of water really fast. Let's go ahead and look at our first unit here. We're going to have the Taskmaster. Now this is going to be a really good unit for you guys because it has the Taskmaster tag for it, which is going to give +2 morale to any slave unit. So it's going to be pretty nice. Normal tag has a whip for an attack. Nothing really to talk about for the stats here. Just a cheap commander that you can use to expand with your slaves with. So next we're going to look at the commander of Satis. I don't really see any time where you would want to make this unit because he doesn't have the Taskmaster trait. He has only 60 leadership, so he's only going to have up to 2 units, and he's not going to get any morale bonus. So honestly, I don't really see you making any of these guys when you have such better options in your lineup. And this is one of them here, since he can have up to 3 squads and give all those squads a morale bonus. Nothing really to talk about stats, just an average Satis unit. So next we're going to be going over the holy mages that you have. I forgot the word from it. There's well, holy priests. So let's put it like that. So one recruitment point for your holy one mage, 30 gold. No, not too big of a deal. Nothing much to say about them. Your next gen lineup, you do have a holy 2. Now this one is a little bit nicer. You can tell he costs a little bit more gold. He has holy 2, so he can cast a couple different holy spells. But the nice thing about this unit is he will have a temple trainer. It says this priest will train a sacred being in a temple, limited one priest per temple. Whenever we head over to the map, I will recruit one of these guys and I will train a serpent just for you guys to see it. So at the time when I'm recording this, I am on turn 12 in the background and I will be heading 13. So pretty interesting. You can definitely make a couple of these guys. Just put them in the temples you have because, yes, you're going to want to be spreading your dominion for sure. So you're going to be having temples. And just, they're all right. Their upkeep isn't too high. So it would be okay putting these guys in temples just to have them recruit the serpents. But I would probably recommend preaching with your Holy 2 first and getting it as high as you can before you start doing that. But it will be nice to start getting some just chaff you can throw out there because I wouldn't necessarily say it's free because you have the upkeep of the priest and the initial payment cost of the priest, but it could come in handy. And I believe those serpents are yeah, I think I did say they were sacred. So next you're going to have a 230 gold holy 3. So this is a very, very nice holy mage you have here. You're recruitable. And it's going to have cost you 4 recruitment points. So it's going to take 2 turns to make. Nothing really to talk about stats. Actually has above average stats looking at it now. Really, really high magical resistance. And he has a very, very high morale or leadership, making his morale bonus +2. Now, for the most part, it would be actually be incredible if he was a recruitment point 2 mage. It only took 1 turn, but as far as it goes, you probably would like a lot of your troops to be led by this guy. A cheaper version you can go for Taskmaster, because at the end of the day, this Lizard King is going to give a +2 morale bonus just like the Taskmaster is. So it's really up to you on which ones you want to lead. But this guy is going to be able to delete any undead or anything that's on the field by casting his different holy spells. So pretty interesting, something to definitely think about. So these next 2 mages here are going to be your main part of the net. Well, I don't want to say main and act like the rest of the nation doesn't really matter, but this is your bread and butter right here. These are going to be your best mages, and these are going to be something you want to make a lot of. The first one here is going to be your researcher, a 90 gold, 36 gold per year, so that's only going to be 3 gold per turn because you divide it by 12. An Astral 1, Nature 1. It's going to be really, really nice to have because, of course, I mean, you're going to have Astral Communions at this point, and you're going to have a lot of these guys because they're going to be your cheapest research or gold to research point researchers. So you're going to have a lot of them, and you're going to want a lot of them. Having that, I mean, they can definitely set up communions. You can cast high level nature magic, either being max protection, mass regeneration, things like that. And you can also do things like mind burn communion. You can do things like or soul slay communions later on in the game. And you can also cast things like Doom, or I forget the name of the one that gives everything luck. But there's a lot of really nice things you can do with these guys. And like I said, you're going to want a lot of them. And you're going to want them in your armies as well when they're moving around because these are pretty big deal having those 2. But on the next one, and these are recruit anywhere if you wonder. On the next one, this is also a recruit anywhere mage. It's going to be only 2 recruitment points, so it's going to take you 1 turn to make as well. It's going to be 235 gold for a 5 path guaranteed mage on top of having two additional randoms, one being 100%, so you'll always get at least one of these, and this one being at 10%. So it's a 230 gold, 235 gold, my apologies, 235 gold, 6 path mage, which is going to be really, really nice because these paths that you get are actually really, really great paths for you to have. First off, well, also say any randoms you get are going to be extremely nice. Astral, you'll be able to join in communions. Water, not as big of a deal, but you can, cast things like rain, which I think you can already do with a water gem. But there's a spell called Quagmire, I think, well, just or it decreases everything, all units' skills if they don't have swamp survival. Um, Def 3, all your mages are going to be Def 2 of course, but Def 3 mages are going to be even better because they're all Horde of Skeletons casters, which is a really, really big deal. You're going to be able to have a lot of these guys, and you're going to be really able to spam skeletons. On top of this, you're going to have nature. And nature 3s are going to be nice, and nature 2s are fine. But having this nature water crosspath is going to put you into foul vapors. If anyone doesn't know what foul vapors is, it's going to be a enchantment level 5 spell, which is going to, for one nature gem, it's going to cast a battlefield spell. As long as the caster is alive, it's going to poison the battlefield. So all the units are going to have to take poison checks, and they will get poisoned. And of course, your units are all going to have poison resistance. So it's going to definitely be a research goal of yours. I'll go over those in just a little bit. So really, really great mage. These last two are really going to be great mages for you. Next, you're going to have the Sobek General. He's just going to be a sacred general. His leadership's kind of low. Yes, he has Taskmaster, but it's small. It's only Taskmaster 1, whereas you have a 40 gold commander that has Taskmaster 2. So not too big of a deal. Maybe you could put some items on these guys and make them light thugs to raid. It's completely up to you. I wouldn't recommend it as much, but they have decent protection. They can't bless themselves, so that's a downside. But it's just a commander you have. And next you have an Empoisoner. This is one of your cap only units. He's an assassin, so you can definitely do an assassin spam. So they're going to be extremely, extremely annoying to deal with for if other nations fight them, and you have really good paths, being Death 1, Nature 1. You can have the spell Swarm, which only takes one nature gem for one, and it's only a one nature spell. And there's going to pretty much take out any commander you cast, or that you try to assassinate. When you cast it, it's going to probably take out any commander. And you give this Poisoner an extra gem, and he can cast Horde of Skeletons while he's assassinating people. So really, really good assassin. I attempted to do a bit of assassin expansion with him. I don't believe the assassin expansion is as strong as your slave expansion is, so I tried a little bit of both just to see. So after saying that, we will head over to the map screen and we will just take a look on how my expansion went. I wanted to do this expansion tonight. I thought about it a little bit, but I didn't want to extenuously keep trying it or keep doing expansion after expansion after expansion just to see how good it could get. I just wanted to load the game up, expand, go to turn 12, and see what the best I can get. Because, it's not any multiplayer game you play. It's not going to be perfect. Every game is not going to be, there's no one around you. There's going to be a lot of things that happen, and I just want to have that kind of as close to that as possible. So we'll go ahead and head over there. So this is turn 12 if you check it on the bottom. So far we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 provinces. It's about average. It went pretty well. See, I would have took this right here, but there are a few air mages in here, so that one was kind of a pain. And there's heavy cav here, so those we're gonna wait for later. I don't think I went into that one, and I believe I bumped off of the wolf tribe here. Now, if you notice, I mean, yes, I have a decent amount of units here. These guys need to move out. I don't must have forgot to change this on the last turn. Um, we could still definitely move out here. This unit right here is just a hero that I got. Now, if you look up at the gold, we are making a lot of gold, and the reason for that is because we went scales, because there's not a bless that you're going to want. You're going to want high dominion, yes, but you're going to be making a lot of units, and your combat mage is going to be very, very expensive, and you're going to need to pay for it. As of right now, yes, we have 3,200 gold, and of course we could have been making castles and stuff, but I wasn't on the ball with that. So you could definitely have a castle coming up here. You could have maybe a castle coming up here because how high the population is. Either a castle, either one of these, definitely this farmland right here, but maybe even additional castle right here. But you have to keep in mind there's a library here as well, so that definitely might be something you want because these are very, very nice researchers, and they're going to be also communion mages, so you're going to want a lot of them, and they're fairly cheap. Their upkeep's not as cheap, but their gold cost is. So overall, I mean, I feel like expansion went pretty fair. Um, I think everything went fairly well. Now, I did say I was going to go over the. Well, I have to get one of the holy twos. I do remember now. Let's just make him. So I'll go ahead and end the turn. I should have showed what the few battles were. I should have showed that battle right there, and that one right over here. Now, this Empoisoner is one from the beginning of the game. On that first turn, I made an Empoisoner and made Slave Warriors, and the two Empoisoners went over here, assassinated the first one went over here on the first turn, and then I made that one and it moved over here. So we assassinated that out, and then we assassinated all the commanders in there, and now he's just assassinating this one. I just put them on cast spells because normally they will pick to cast Animate Soulless or Animate Skeleton, which is going to be your best choice when fighting commanders because usually your mage will not fatigue out till he already has 3 to 4 skeletons, maybe 5 skeletons out. So it's going to be really, really tough for one commander to beat them depending on what kind of commander it is. Now, of course, if it's heavy cav, you're going to want to go with a different strategy, but as far as your average indie commander goes, that's going to be pretty decent. So let's go ahead and set this guy here to train monster in temple, and we'll just take a look at that or the sacred you get from that. Like I said, another one gone. So that was 2 over the last 2 turns. I'll just watch this battle. See, yep, see he's attacking or casting animate skeleton, and we'll watch this. I'll put it on ×2 speed. Not too exciting, but as you can tell, the skeletons are starting to build up, and he's dead. So just about as good as you want it to ever go. So let's see. Here is your Sacred Serpent. I want to talk about these guys a little bit. I did forget that they have the standard trait, so you could definitely put them in with your slaves. You can put them in with any of your units, and they're going to give you a +1 to morale. And they also have very high morale themselves. I guess this would also help out the reason why your regular infantry have lower than average morale as well. You have a poison fang attack that will deal poison damage. It's armor negating, so that's a pretty big deal. Decent unit, 22 hit points, 7 protection. They do cost upkeep, but only 4, so it's not too bad. I doubt you really will be able to notice it if you take scales. So pretty interesting. I just wanted to show that unit off a little bit. So going on to our next thing is that we are going to want to go over our research goals. Um, for your first research target, I would recommend going down enchantment going to enchantment 5. I mean, obviously, I haven't really focused on paying attention to what I was recruiting at times. So, in your games or in your test games, you're going to have higher research than what I'll have right now. But I just want to go over this. So, your first goal is going to be level 5 enchantment. Now, what you're going to get here in level 5 enchantment is you're going to be able to get Horde of Skeletons, which is going to be a really, really great spell for your units to cast. The Death 2 mages, they're going to be great. You're going to want to put them in front line. You're going to want them to cast Horde of Skeletons until they pass out and fall asleep on the floor. Um, because they're going to be able to make a lot of units. Other than that, this is going to be the other reasons why you want to go down to Enchantment 5, and which I've already talked about, is Foul Vapors. A really, really great field or battlefield spell, especially for your nation. Um, on top of that, you have Quagmire. It might be a little bit more difficult to make, um, but at the end of the day, see, all your units do have Swamp Survival, so it may be something you want to consider casting. I don't think I spoke. So -1 attack skill, -1 defense skill, +2 encumbrance, and -20% combat speed for the enemy or for all the units that don't have that tag to them. So really, really great. Lots of good stuff here. The only bad thing about Satis is that they're kind of a one-trick pony, and when I say that is whenever you join a game, people are going to know this is your strategy. This is what you're going to do. So it's really up to you to see if you can either outplay them, maybe out diplo them. So at the same time, especially early enough on in the game, I feel like a lot of nations still aren't going to be prepared enough to deal with these things. So pretty interesting to think about. The next research goal I would like to talk about is Alteration 5. Now, when I go over these research goals, I mean, I definitely feel like Enchantment 5 should be your first research goal, but you can also, these goals that I give you, I wouldn't like take them to heart. I wouldn't say, oh, well, he said go for this goal first or go for this goal second, you know. Um, Make a feel or just kind of get a feel for this nation and kind of understand what you're really planning on doing or what you want to do or plan to do. Um, and just get an idea of what you might need to better combat armies at that time. All games are different, of course, and just keep that in mind. So, what I want to talk about in Alteration 5, which is actually one of these, I wouldn't really say. I, Alteration 4 is also a great one. I wanted to talk about that one as well because in Alteration 4, you get Swarm, which is going to greatly increase combat for either your assassins or battlefield because you have a lot of Nature 1 mages. So, really, really nice spell. Other than that, why I spoke about Alteration 5 is for, yes, you can cast invulnerability, not that big of a deal for some of your units. Um, you could do things like fire resistance, that's actually pretty decent since any of your water mages, that random water, will be able to cast that with an extra gem, so it'll cost you 2 gems instead of 1. But the really big thing about this is Wooden Warriors. Now, this is going to be only an Area 5 spell, but you have multiple Nature 2 mages that you'll always have because they come out being Nature 2 mages. And this could be something that you use your Nature randoms to cast, so it will cost them even less fatigue, so they'll be able to cast it more. What it's going to do is give all your all your units that get hit by it, gives them natural protection 10, so it already increases their protection by 5 because if you remember, a lot of units had either natural protection 3 or natural protection 5. Now let's go ahead and look. I wanted to check how much natural protection the Elite Warriors have. So they have natural protection 3, so it's going to actually increase their armor value by 7, which is going to be really, really nice, but since that will also help with the fact that they do not have anything on their head. So I think it will give a bonus to that. So you will definitely see an increase in their protection doing that. So really, really good idea. Something just kind of add to your front line to really buff out your units. Um, Other than that, I would very much recommend going for construction, being construction 4, because in construction 4 you have a really, you hit a point where construction 2 really isn't that big of a deal. Yes, it has items in it. Yes, it has maybe a few items you can use to thug things or lightly thug, but construction 2 is going to hit you to a point where you can craft boosters. So off the top of my head, you can make a thistle mace with every nature 2 that you have. So that's going to make it so any nature 2 is a nature 3, or a nature 3 is going to be a nature 4. Um, you can make a skull staff, which is going to do the same thing for all your deaths or death randoms. It's going to either push them up to 3 or 4. So very, very nice, especially for casting higher level death magic or nature magic, of course. You will also be able to get to higher water magic. But I believe to cast the cloak, you're going to need a water 3. But if you decide to go up to construction 6, you'll be able to make water bracelets, which give you +1 to water. I believe a water 1 mage can make them, and they're only going to cost 5 or 10 gems. I can't remember off the top of my head. So by doing that, you're going to be able to make any random go up to water 3, or any water random you get go up to water 3. So at that point, you'll be able to make a cloak going up to water 4, and at that point, you'll be able to either cast water 4 or water 5 spells with an extra gem. So it could be very, very useful, something to keep in mind for sure. I didn't want to mention this as one of your research goals, but it is something really nice to have, because sometimes you might get it when you random your magic paths. And it's just going to be Thaumaturgy 2. This could be something very handy in the early game. Obviously, in the later game, you want to go higher to get some better spells for this if you decide to do this kind of thing. But with those research mages I spoke about earlier, you're going to have a lot of them. You're going to have a lot of them in your army, you're going to have a lot of them researching at home. And if it comes down to it and you need to use those mages, you can communion them up. At that point, you'll have communion, or you have Thaumaturgy 1, so you have communion master and communion slave, and start casting mind burn. This is armor negating, of course. It's only going to be resisted by magic or magical resistance, and I think it's either MR10 or MR12 versus the rest of this here. So pretty low. So a lot of the units are going to be, well, most of those early game units there's a good chance that they're not going to be able to resist it. But if a unit does have very, very high morale, have a much higher chance of resisting it, of course. But this is something going to come in very, very handy if you need to make a ragtag army real fast. And even if then, putting a couple of guys casting mind burn into a communion is going to be very, very handy anyway. Other than that, you have Soul Slay, which is a much, much better mind burn, but it costs 3 astral paths instead of 2. But if it does go past the magical resistance, it's going to kill them. There's no question about it. It doesn't matter how much they thug or how much health. Well, of course, they have more than 1,000, but you're not going to see that. It doesn't matter how much attack or if they're repelling or if anything that goes through the magical resistance, it's going to kill them. So something kind of interesting I wanted to speak to you about. Not necessarily a research target, but something really, really nice to have because it will come in handy. you're not too much of an evocation nation. Um, yeah, you can cast some shadow bolts or something. Magic Duel might come in handy since you have so many astral mages, but other than that, I mean, you're definitely going to be an alteration and enchantment nation. It's just how you're built to be, and don't want anyone to come and say, "Oh, well, you do this and this and this," but this is just how I feel about it. So we're going to exit out of this game here. I'm going to quit without saving. And we're going to go and make a pretender god for you guys. So let's see if we can find it. Here we go. So I would not recommend taking an awake expander. You could always do it, but it's definitely going to cut into your scales. Um, so looking at this, unfortunately, I just want to take a look at these guys real fast. I probably wouldn't make either of them. I mean, you could do a Fountain of Blood type of thing and kind of, once it comes out in the late game, like bootstrap into blood pretty easily. Um, but honestly, I would probably go with the Great Sage since you have, and he is an inspiring researcher, and you know you're going to have a lot of mages at home. Um, I could see, well, hmm, could see an argument for having some other things, but as far as what I would do, I would pick a Great Sage. I would put him down to imprisoned. I would take Revig. So it's going to help out with your mages because if you notice those mages, that's going to be either communion slaves, maybe even communion masters. They are sacred mages. Something to think about, something to consider. And maybe you can do something like magic weapons because I can promise you, you don't want to be caught with your pants down without magic weapons because it is really, really going to hurt. I promise. Um, Something to keep in mind. And you might say, oh, well, there's no ghosts, there's no other things like that. But any astral mage or astral thug can always cast something like Body Ethereal. Um, if anyone decides to do an elemental spam, all those elementals are ethereal. So something to definitely keep in mind, and this is why I wouldn't necessarily recommend making too many sacred units, either the Swamp Guard or the Sobek Sacred Guard, but you might want to have magic weapons in there just in case. I mean, if I didn't go magic weapons, I would honestly. Oh man, tough one. Either go finesse or magical resistance. It's a really tough one to consider because yes, you do have those mind burn spams, and having a +1 to the penetration is going to be really really nice. But on top of that, magical resistance is always nice to have anyway. Um, I can see a definite argument for going Revigoration and Arcane Finesse. Now, obviously, you can always take that off if you didn't want that. Um, I would go up to Heat 3 for sure because, like I said, you're going to be a cold, or no, you're going to have a lot of trouble in cold. So, having extra heat in the wintertime is going to be nice because that's going to be setting you to a neutral scale instead of being in a cold scale. And also, it's going to be a little bit easier to kind of push your, or it's going to be a little bit easier to push the temperature dominion part. As far as dominion goes, remember you're going to want pretty high dominion. And I would recommend, you probably don't need too high production because most of the units you're going to be making are slaves. But you're going to be wanting high order because I feel like recruitment points are going to be what's going to cap you. On top of that, I would recommend going Magic 3. Maybe dropping the resource, the productivity. I don't know why I keep forgetting that name. Maybe adding a, oh man, I would have liked luck. Let's sit here and play with the scales a little bit. Maybe we won't take luck. Let's take the revig off and see what we can do here. So taking the revig off, we can go luck 3, which is going to be really, really nice. Or we could do something like maybe productivity. Well, I think you should still be relatively safe with only taking productivity 1. I don't feel like the income bonus is going to be that big of a deal to you. Because on top of that, you're going to be having luck scales, and obviously luck scales, you're going to have a lot of good events happening. And on top of that, you're going to have a 7% increase in your income here for your Dominion. So instead of looking at it like 13, it's basically 20 at this point. So really, really interesting. I think this is a pretty fun nation because there's a lot of things that you might not see originally. Looking at it is something you definitely have to read up on a little bit to understand the other little tricks to them, being the productivity, or not productivity, being the income addition and decrease for enemy if they're in your dominion, and the poison to the troops if they're in your dominion as well. So pretty interesting. I like this build right here. I think it'd be pretty nice. Now, obviously, you can play with what you decide to go with as far as the astral goes. Of course, either being magical resistance, arcane finesse, or magic weapons, depending on what you think or what you may want. Let me take a sip of water real fast. I apologize. So overall, I think this is going to be really, really nice. I can definitely see you going maybe by year 2 and already having five or more temples pushing you up to Dominion 8, because you have to think every capture you make is going to have a temple and a lab, which is unfortunate. But all of your research monkeys, they're sacred mages. It's just the way it is. So taking these scales are going to really, really help out with that. Because not only will you need to pay for the mages, which are, or you're going to need to pay for your non-sacred mages, which are the Marsh Masters. These guys right here, which are going to have very, very expensive upkeep. You're going to need to pay for every castle to have a temple and a lab in it. So this is going to be very, very expensive, and really going to take a toll on your economy. But at the same time, you're going to be making a lot of money. So really, really fun nation. Maybe you could do something like this as well. If you do your test games and you decide, hey, I really don't need as many recruitment points. I definitely need more resources. Maybe you decide to go with the Falchineers as your core unit instead of the slaves. Like I said, play with your scales. Make a few test games. Definitely work on it. It's always good to make a test game before you play it on multiplayer, or especially for a nation that you've never played before. Always try to make a test game for them. If you wonder about a bless, maybe try it. Maybe load up a game. Maybe if you want to do revig, maybe you want to do arcane finesse, and just try it out. Work with it. So this has been a lot of fun. I'm glad I was able to bring this middle-aged nation to you for this week, guys. I really appreciate all the comments, all the views that I've gotten so far. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, of course. I believe I'm up to 35 subscribers now, which is really awesome. I've only got like 4 videos or 5 videos. I don't remember. I did end up having to go with making 2 videos last week because I screwed up and forgot to talk about research. But I did add that second video just to make sure I didn't leave anything out. So, further ado, I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope you guys really maybe even play this nation in multiplayer at some point. It's definitely a lot of fun. So, see you guys.